Hello there. So I realised recently that normally I do my integrations during a retreat, maybe towards the end, but definitely during, and I feel I want to do the same thing about my retreat here in India, because that's effectively what it is. And I am really struggling with this one. I know even before I start I'm struggling, because I feel that to attempt to encompass into words what for me is like travelling into a completely different dimension, it's hard to know what to focus on and what to leave out. It's the ultimate dilemma every time we open our mouths to say anything, isn't it, really? So I'm going to begin by whatever comes out. And my first thing is I'm just so incredibly grateful to Ahmed, Reshma, Ryan, the team, the animals, the cats, the plants, and these two flats, and the Godrej Platinum Apartments and the Wisman apartment next door, and Habal and Bangalore and Mother India, because that's the way that I say my prayers, that section of them. So for me, perhaps one of the most important things is being ripped out of the way that I'm used to doing things to such a great extent. That's so powerful. And my highlight experiences particularly are going into the forest, which I went into 3 times this time. I didn't go at all last time, and it is such a beautiful experience to be in a dry forest. It's not something I'm familiar with at all, and the energy there is very, very high, very wild, very bright, very energizing. So that's been a wonderful experience. Another of my really wonderful experiences, of course, has been doing my 100,000th Chamunda mantra, the Om Aim Hreem Kleem Chamundaya Viche, shortly after I arrived. Feels like ages ago. And then the other thing is going to Pyramid International and getting to know the ghee cows. The cows that create the ghee, in other words, the milk that the cows produce, is of such a high quality. It's used to make one of the best ghees one can get hold of. And it's interesting how what's special about the cows is they produce a small amount of high quality milk rather than a huge amount of the poorest quality milk, which is what we've become used to in the West. So that's a really great experience, just being with the cows and feeling their energy, feeling their openness and the gentleness and the calmness, and then having the aroma of the cows on my hands for hours afterwards, and being really reluctant to wash them because it was such a wonderful aroma. And also it gives me great pleasure to see animals that are really well cared for, and that really is the truth about those cows. So if you get to reincarnate as an ashram cow, you've really hit the jackpot, that's what I would say. And then I suppose that brings me straight into the spiritual journey of being here, and the whole subject of reincarnation, which is so much a part of the life of everybody here, and the way that everyone is managing the material realms, and it is extraordinary to witness. I see so many things. So one thing I wanted to tell you about is I got an auto from the city centre towards the place called Filter Coffee, where I was going to get my dosa meal, and the guy struck me immediately as being unusual, because he was happy to spend a few minutes having a conversation about how much it was going to cost and how far it was, and he told me the going rate, and we worked it all out. And on the drive he started to ask me questions, and very mercifully for us there was some horrendous traffic, which is completely routine here, and it meant the journey was going to take a lot longer. So he asked me a lot of questions about myself And then that followed up by me asking him a lot of questions about himself. And at the end of it all, I had hoped to be able to give him a tip, but I had exactly the right money. And I said, sorry, I've only got exactly the right money here in rupees. And he said, as far as I'm concerned, you've given me a tip. The conversation was a tip. And that was such a lovely thing to hear. And I guess that's one of the things I'm aware about here, is that I'm having to take a different approach to who I am and being me. So I'm very much used to, when I'm in England, doing things, and it's about what I'm doing. And here, what I'm discovering is it's really not about what I'm doing, it's much more about who I am. And a comment was made only yesterday, I think it was, that you sit down and you're quiet and you don't appear to be doing much, and yet I feel you're doing a great deal. And so this is a really quirky example of what I mean, which is that when I arrived, Ahmed had been working on this building, the one made out of the steel frame, since May, June of this year. 6 months had gone by. He'd had some legal issues which had held everything up for about 3 months, and they were all resolved shortly before I arrived. And he didn't tell me at the time, but he created his own intention, which is, before Keith leaves, we will sit down, we'll have a drink of some water, we'll have a smoke, and the house will be done. And all power to him. That was the intention he developed for himself, and he made it so. And yesterday evening, when the final adjustments were done to the lighting system, and the many people who were working to do all the work, people on the team, people not on the team, and gradually people left, and it was just the two of us and maybe a couple of people downstairs. And he said that to me. He said, that was my point. My point is, I'm so grateful to you to come here, because I harnessed my intention to your coming here and being here, and I wanted it to be done before you left, and here we are. The day before you left, it's done. Cool. And so that shows me that sometimes, by doing absolutely nothing, we can make really big impacts on other people and their lives and their plans and their ideas and what they're doing. So that was a really powerful wake up to realize it can often be about what we don't do. Our just being can have more effect than the things we do. So that was a lovely thing to hear. And then the contrasts, I took you all with me into that gated village shopping centre with the restaurants and the shops. And then the following day we got up at just before 3, and by 3:15 we were there in the centre of the city. A 15-minute journey by auto, unthinkable at any other time of day. And suddenly there we were, plodding through the wet, the mud, the plastic residues on the ground, on the street outside the market, and it continued to be pretty much like that into the market as well. And to see a lot of the stalls not open yet, but a number of stalls open, and to see the flowers and to see the flower garlands, and even to realise if you go to exactly the right place, there is somewhere you can get flowers on stalks, which I didn't think was possible here. And just being with the energy of the people carrying these huge bundles of burdens and moving, the way people move. Something I learnt in 5 Rhythms dance, which has been extended out into ecstatic dance at Dance Church and Dance Meds and other places I go to in Glastonbury. The thing about the dance is, I'm in a space, and what I'm doing is I'm moving through space, and what I keep doing, I keep occupying this space that's vacant. Where there is a space, I flow into that space to fill it. It's a deeply spiritual thing to do. And that's what I noticed everyone was doing in the market. Nobody crashed into anybody. Nobody collided. Everyone was skillfully manoeuvring their way between the objects and the other beings. And then I have spent the best part of a month being driven by Ahmed, often to Site 59 and to the Avanali forest, probably got the name of the pronunciation that forest wrong, and to other places. And what I'm doing is I am very, very aware. I'm completely in the moment, and I'm noticing how it is to drive here. And at first it feels chaotic, and at the very beginning it feels terribly dangerous. And the more that I experience being driven here, the more I realise not a bit of it. What it is exactly the same thing as people moving through the market space. Me and other dancers moving through a dance space, we are simply very intelligently, we are cutting it fine. This is true, we are cutting it really fine with the spaces, but we are manoeuvring our way, and wherever there is the smallest gap, that's what we're moving into. And it's an automatic, completely spiritualized process of who enters that space first, then the others give way. That's the simplest way. So coming out of the small road to the forest and onto the main road, which is going to take us all the way to Hebal, which would eventually take us to the city centre, that road is heaving. There's traffic, loads and loads in both directions. And what he does is he inches out into the space. He inches out into space, and when the space ceases to expand, he stops. As soon as the space expands again, he inches out. And that's the way things are done here in terms of the manoeuvring through the traffic. And it's also the same as being a pedestrian, really, and also being on driving an auto or a scooter or a motorbike, whatever form of transport it is. That's what everybody is doing. Everybody is running a automatically choreographed script based upon that single premise I've explained. So that's something I'm in awe of here. In my first visit, Reshma gave me the spiritual gift of smile and wave, most particularly appropriate when you're in a country where many people don't necessarily understand what you're saying. So it's a paradox here. English is a second language. I'm going to make a very crude statement, which is not strictly speaking true, but generally the people that have had the greater education, English is shit hot. People have not had such an education that's much more problematical for them to be able to speak to you and to reply to you and to understand you. And so what I notice there is the smile and wave is the default, and that's lovely. And always to be open to the most unexpected situation. When suddenly you're having this conversation with this person, it's like, wow, it's amazing. And I didn't even know that they'd be able to understand me. Which brings me to education. India is the most largely populated country on the planet. India is a country which had a highly advanced civilization from around about the birth of Christ's time all the way through to the 1700s. So for 1,700 years they had a highly advanced civilization, and it shows. And they did indeed enter into a decline, which was the opportunity the British took to take charge, which they did for a relatively short period of time, a blink of an eye in terms of 1,700 years. It was just blinking, you missed it. That was the British Empire in India, the Raj. So brief. And we gave them so much, and we stole so much. Seems to be the British Empire's way of doing things. But in the Science Gallery of Bangalore, I got to handle books from 1800 about astronomy and the solar system, what Indian people were taught, and books written by English academics and officials about the management of education in India. And what I understand is education has always been a big thing. For the 1,700 years they had their empire, it's been a big thing. And then when the British came in, the British Empire is a great thing. And since 1948, still a great thing. And when I drive around, or I'm driven around, the number of schools, colleges, universities, specialized research institutes for brain issues, neurology, you name it, endocrine, whatever. There is so much going on here, education is so highly valued, and there is such a deep respect for education. And no, the majority don't get the education at the moment, but those that do are regarded as the way showers for the future. And more, what will happen in India is that the literacy rate and the education rate will continue to improve, because there's a real unbending, unspoken intent contract in this country, which is learn, observe, grow, and when you've done those things, find out how to make money, make it a success, employ other people, become a business which is part of the success story of this country. And I also meant to mention the Art of Living and Sadhguru Sri or Sri Ravi Shankar or Gurudev, that's all the same guy on the one hand, or Sadhguru on the other hand. These are two modern gurus who've taken this to the apotheosis. I cannot believe when I went to Sri's ashram, we were there after dark, so I couldn't take any footage of it, and they were selling everything you could conceive of. There was supermarket, there were clothes shops, there was cafe, there was restaurant, there was this, there was that. There was like, oh my goodness me. And all the workshops, the free discourses every evening at 6:30, which are televised on YouTube every single day, with the guru answering the questions. What I became aware of with all that is it's like, even in the spiritual community, there is such a impulse to want to become successful in the physical realms too, because what I feel that people recognize here is they've got this fantastically deep spiritual foundation, and they are exploring and learning, working with material realms, but the aim is to marry the two together and to therefore be able to be most successful. So gone are the days when India was about pure spirituality and money was a dirty subject and people didn't really want to get involved with. Oh no, that's all ancient history. That died sometime during the 20th century. The 21st century, the age of Aquarius, is all about bringing the most material and the most spiritual civilization together to form a whole. And that's how I'm going to end my integration. Thank goodness I managed to find the words. And all the love to you.